Hey, welcome back. Well, last night was a debate between the two vice presidential candidates, and Rebel News live streamed the debate and had active live color commentary by our Rebel stars. It reminded me of how things have changed and how others have not. What has not changed are the mainstream media reporters who claim to be neutral moderators, but only interrupt the Republican candidate, only purport to fact check the Republican candidate. That's been going on forever. But one thing that changed was the foreign policy questions. I remember when Barack Obama criticized Mitt Romney for being worried about Russia. And remember when he said, hey, the 1980s called, they want their foreign policy back? Here's a clip of that.
Asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America? You said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda. You said Russia. And the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because the Cold War's been over for 20 years.
Well, oddly enough, it's the Democrats who have anathematized Russia. He is the bogeyman for everything. They claim that they are interfering in the U.S. elections and that Trump was colluding with them. But there are real questions about China now. I think they should have been asked much earlier. And one of the things that I thought was weird was that the Democratic vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, did you know that he's been to China 30 times? 30 times? I don't even know if I've visited my in-laws 30 times over the course of my marriage. Maybe I shouldn't give away personal details like that, but think about 30 times. That's very odd. And of course, he's a bit of a communist in his own way. We'll talk a little bit about that. Here's a clip from the debate where he was asked about, I don't know, some fibbing he did. He was asked about a statement he made about communist China. Take a look at this.
Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Well, there is Tim Walz. He didn't really answer the question. He was called on it a little bit. He used the opportunity to basically give a biographical speech. But what is it with Tim Walz? Was it just a cultural exchange? When he said he went there to learn, who was he learning from? Because, of course, especially back in the 80s and 90s, when you visited China, you were handled. You weren't free to go and do your own things. Is Tim Walz too pro-CCP, Chinese Communist Party? He had a shot at Xi Jinping there. Is that just for show? As you know, in Canada, we've had a massive inquiry into Chinese influence. 11 members of parliament, over 160 memos to our own prime minister about Chinese influence, most of which he ignored. Joining us now to talk about this is Xi Van Fleet, who herself grew up under communist China before coming to America and being an advocate for freedom. Xi, it's great to see you again.
Well, thank you for having me back.
Well, it's a pleasure, and I need your help to crack the code here. I don't know that much about Tim Walz. I don't think most people do. He's from Minnesota, which isn't really in the headlines a lot. I was startled to hear he went back and forth to China 30 times. He claims it was just student exchanges and cultural exchanges. I don't know. I think that when dictatorships have exchanges like that, it's either for propaganda reasons or to recruit spies, either witting or unwitting. What do you think of all that?
Well, that is a softball question. You know it. And by the way, they just found out that he did not go to China for 30 times. He went to China for about 15 times. Why would he lie about it? It's kind of weird. The only thing we can say is that he's just habitual liar. So it is important to know the background. So he went to China in 1989. I came out of China in 1986. China was still kind of starting to open, and we started to have Americans or Westerners come to college most of the time in university to teach. And very few would be allowed to teach in high school. That's where he went. And that's the whole teaching trip was organized by Harvard, knowing as really the university that's most pro-CCP since the 30s. So he was part of that organization that was sent to Beijing, sent to China. And I have to tell you, the Chinese government back then, especially back then, they have to make sure who they are getting. And there must be a vetting going on, and he must pass their examination. Say that, okay, this guy looks like is going to be a useful idiot. It turned out he's not just a useful idiot. He's a true believer. He absolutely loved what he saw. And he described China as the communism is the system that's so fair that everyone had the same thing. He must be blind because not everyone had the same thing. The ruling class have everything. The average people have nothing. And back then in 1989, it was obvious that there was absolutely two classes, and he did not see that. No, he saw it. He loved it. And so back in China, back to the United States, he organized student trips. And he told his students, to stop being very American. Go there and learn about China. He's not talking about China. He's talking about the system. He loved it. So I will categorize him as a true believer. He really found that himself so lined up with not just communism, but Maoism. So he is a communist, a Maoist through and through.
Wow. You know, one of the interesting things about Kamala Harris, independent observers noted that she was the most left-wing senator in the entire U.S. Senate, even to the left of Bernie Sanders. That wasn't a partisan ranking. You can actually sort of measure these things based on what they support, what bills they support. So Harris herself is more communist than Bernie Sanders. And it seems like Absolutely. Tim Walz, I mean, he calls himself, I'm just a knucklehead. I think he's going for that goofy, lovable thing. I think he actually is a bit of a knucklehead. You used the word useful idiot. Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.